Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Intelligence Racing League Sprint Championship, round 4 of the season. Before we head into the new game in a few weeks' time, it take place at Great Britain today. So, yeah, fourth round of the championship. My name is Carmentalis, otherwise known as Aidan. I will be taking through comms today. Unfortunately, my trusty co-comms Ivory Mic is not here today, so you guys are just stuck with me. So you guys are going to have to keep me company in the chat today while I take you through proceedings today. But yeah, so we're moving on to round 4. We're moving through this championship pretty quickly at the moment. But just before we get into it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the championship standings coming into this race. So just coming into this one, after Germany last time out, it was Bullet Boy that won on the road, but unfortunately due to a glitch in the game, he was able to corner cut a number of the corners without receiving any penalties. So he's had his win stripped, unfortunately, because of that. So he ended up falling to, I believe, 4th. Yeah, he finished 4th in the end after his penalties were given. He also has a qualifying ban for this race as well because of that. And I believe LR Ghost also has a qualifying ban for today. So those two will be retiring from qualifying as soon as it gets going. But championship standings wise, Lewis, after a relatively poor race, honestly, last time out in Germany, still managed to come home in second place. He had a really good recovery in the second half of the race, so he takes second overall. The winner last time out was Daniel, so congrats to Daniel for taking the win in the end. He jumps way up the standings, actually. He jumps up to 5th now. He'd only scored 6 points in the first 2 rounds, but then takes the win in Germany, so congrats to him. Just as did not take part in the race previous, but he is still second in the championship because Toxic, who did take part in the race in Germany, unfortunately had a bit of a torrid race, so he stays in 3rd in the championship. Janetsky in 4th, Mr. Consistency, I'd like to say. He's level on points at the moment with Toxic, so they're equal 3rd, the Red Bull and the Ferrari driver. Then it's Daniel, like I said. LNR Mike is currently running in 6th, ahead of Matty, who's in 7th. McCrew, our Season 1 champion, is running in 8th. Bullet Boy is 9th, and XL Ryan rounds out the top 10. Below that, just Chris, he's moved up from 11th. He was on -1 point in the standings after round 2, but he managed to score for the first time in Germany, so he's jumped all the way up to 11th. So he's got his season off to a good start now, so hopefully he can build on that. But yeah, that's the championship standings coming into this event. But just other than that, just noting some people who are further down in the standings who haven't really had the start that they were wishing for. XL Hardy obviously had his first race last time out, and he was on wheel. Unfortunately, he DNF'd, so he's still without any points at the moment. As is Ghost. Ghost, unfortunately, hasn't scored so far this season, so he's down in 22nd in the championship on 0 points. So he's got to try and get his season off to a start. Same with the likes of J Luke. J Luke has had a relatively poor run so far. He finished outside of the points in the first round in Bahrain and in Germany, and then DNF'd in Spain, so he's yet to score. Dylan has only scored the 1 point so far. He's down in 20th, likewise with Callum. And then people like Bjorn and Aquaplaning just haven't had the best start to the season so far. So hopefully for the likes of those, they can jump up the standings in today's race. Britain obviously hosts some really good racing and some really good overtaking opportunities. So fingers crossed we get a lot of that today. Good afternoon to everyone in the chat. Like saying Jav saying all the shade. Yeah, very shady. Just looking through the rest of the chat. Yeah, hi Tyler. He thinks that he's already put his qualifying predictions in, so he thinks that Toxic's going to be on pole ahead of Lewis and Just As. They've been the top 3 pretty much the whole season so far. Those 3 have been pretty fast entire season. Not really many people other than the likes of Daniel and Mike have really come close to beating them in previous races. Obviously Daniel kind of lucked into the race win last time out, but you create your own luck in this game. So he was the first one of those top 3 to not first one other than the top 3 in the standings to not win a race. So fingers crossed. There are some more contenders in this one. We have got a new starter today, I believe. We've got XL Gary. So I know XL Gary from Division 2 in League of Europe. I've raced with him a few times. He was, well, when I say a few times, I've raced with him the last season. So he won the D2 Championship in League of Europe a few weeks ago. So he's definitely good competition. I'd say he'd probably be right at the front. So look out for him to get off to a good start in the Ferrari. We were meant to be having another member of Livid Racing joining, I believe, but I don't think he's here just yet. So we'll wait and see if he does join. If not, then I imagine we'll probably get going without him, unfortunately. But just looking at everyone else's, it's just looking at everyone else's predictions. So Bullet Boy thinks that Toxic's going to win from Just As and McCrew. Jav says that he thinks Just As is going to get pole ahead of McCrew and Lewis. He did initially say Gary, but there's a psych in that one. So, morning to Philippe. Morning to loads. Yeah, everyone in the chat. So everyone, pop in your predictions. What you think is going to happen in the race? Who do you think is going to win? Any shock predictions you think you have for Silverstone? Yeah, let us know what you think is going to happen. We're only a couple minutes away from starting. Hopefully, we get started pretty soon. Yeah. Other than that, let's have a look through. Let's have everyone in the chat keep me going for the next 5 or 10 minutes while we wait for qualifying to get started. But just having a look actually through the rest of the standings, there's quite a few people here that have had really good races so far that haven't necessarily got the results that they were wanting. I think one that stands out for me so far is Sparholt. Sparholt has had 2 really good races both in Spain and Germany, just the result didn't come for him in the end. So I'd look out for Sparholt if he's racing. Fingers crossed he is racing, because he's definitely up at the front. I don't think he is in the lobby though, unfortunately, but he's had 2 really good races so far. Jaff asked me what's my prediction. I think I don't know whether I want to make my prediction now or whether I want to wait and see what the weather's like, because I think the top 3 in qualifying I think is going to be completely different if it's wet. So I think if it's dry, I would probably put that's a hard one. I'd probably put Toxic on pole if it's dry. I think second could easily be Gary. I think Gary could be right at the front. I think he might take second in qualifying, and third I'd probably say would be Lewis. That would probably be my dry prediction. But if it's wet, then I would probably put Lewis on pole maybe if it was wet. So you never really know. Here we go then though. We're just loading into qualifying. We have to wait and see. We had a bit of weather play a part in the Germany race. Obviously, last time out, it rained pretty much the entirety of the race in Germany, but it was only really ever wet enough for intermediates at very certain points in the race. But you could run around on dries and not really lose any time, and that really threw up some changes in strategy. And at many points in the race, it looked like many different people could have won that race, from the likes of Sparholt to Toxic to Lewis to Daniel to Bullet Boy. So a number of people could have won that one last time out. So fingers crossed we get more of the same today. Just loading into the qualifying session then, and we'll wait and see what the weather's like for qualifying. Here we go then. It is looking cloudy, but it is dry so far. So it's either a case of it's going to stay cloudy pretty much the entire qualifying, or it might get wet towards the end and we might see a bit of a rush to get out in qualifying. By the looks of it though, according to Bullet Boy, it looks like it's going to be all dry. So we've got a fully dry qualifying. So yeah, so my prediction stands. I think then Toxic might get pole today. I think Gary will be second and Lewis is third. I'm not going to put money on it though, because I've been wrong many a time before. But we'll just wait and see who's going to be the first out of the pit lane. By the looks of it, I think it might be McCrew that's going to be the first one out. It is. So Season 1 champion McCrew is going to be the first person out onto the track in the Racing Point. Here we go, then out in the Racing Point. Let's see what he can do in terms of lap time. Running a brilliant Halloween helmet. But yeah, one thing to look out for today, obviously the strategy around this track in dry conditions is a pretty easy soft medium, but the soft tyres can last a pretty long time around this track. So a lot of people might want to try and maybe run an overcut in the race in this one, to try and keep the soft tyres on for as long as possible, and then put the mediums on for the latter part of the race, and vice versa. If anyone tries to do the alternate strategy, then maybe putting earlier for mediums and putting the softs on for a longer stint at the end is definitely possible around here. So keep an eye out for that. We'll have to wait and see what everyone else's tyre strategies are as well. But a lot of people coming out of the pits at the same time. There's a real queue of cars actually coming out of the pit lane. Just having a look through the rest of the predictions. So we've got QVR Campbell. Hello Campbell in the chat. He says his prediction is Gary to spin at one point, and my only safe prediction. So he thinks that Gary's going to spin at some point. Sorry Gary, if you're tuning in, you're getting absolutely roasted. And Iro Damon has commented saying that Toxic will bottle. Same with Dylan. So we've got a lot of roast predictions so far, but fair enough. So let's have a look then and see. We'll ride on board with McCrew. We'll go fully on board for his first lap in qualifying. We've got one of the Red Bulls starting behind him on the track as well. I think that's Toxic that's starting just behind him. Here goes McCrew though, round the last corner. Now into turn 1 at Abbey, the first corner on the track. A relatively easy corner to take. Don't really have to think about it in qualifying. He's got one of the Hasses coming out the pit lane in front. That's Ryan. Ryan is in the way a little bit, but he gets out of the way just before the farm section. Through Farm and Village now then for McCrew. The most technical part of the track, definitely the slowest speed on the track he will get. Onto the Wellington Straight now. First the DRS zones. So he comes up to the end of the first sector. So his first sector time is, it's a 27 flat. That's a pretty competitive first sector. Probably see the fastest first sector being maybe a 26.9, possibly a 26.8 if anyone absolutely nails their first sectors. Through Luffield now and then into Woodcote. Long run through Woodcote. A good overtaking opportunity if you get the run out of Luffield in the race. As we come up into Copse now, it's easily flat, I'd say, in qualifying. McCrew lifts off ever so slightly going into the corner, so not quite fully confident in that so far. So comes into Maggots and Beckett's now. First two are Maggots, into the two corners of Beckett's now, and then through Chapel onto the Hanger Straight. Coming to the end of the second sector, it's a 1 minute 2.7. It is looking like a good lap so far. He's not using all the road though. He is being relatively cautious on this first run. Through Stowe now then. He obviously has to keep it within the track limits here. We have got track limits in place. He keeps it well within the track limits. As we come now into the Vale corner and then Club, the last double apex corner on the track. Comes through the last corner. Bullet Boy's already retired. That's obviously for his qualifying ban. And McCrew does a 26.4 for the first lap out of the gate. Brilliant lap for McCrew. Let's see if anyone can top that. Toxic comes across the line and does a 26.3, so he goes a 10th clear in the Red Bull. It's still pretty close, but Toxic, he holds the lead so far. Let's see if anyone can beat Toxic's time of a 26.3, a 26.6 for Mike. He pops into third. Let's have a look through the field now. We've got both of the McLarens coming up to the line. We've got Aquaplaning's just on a 27.7. Got Just As coming up to the line, and he takes pole at 26.2. He goes just under a 10th clear of his championship rival. Jumps up to the front of the field. Lewis jumps up into P6 on a 26.8 on a set of the medium tyres. That's a brilliant nap time for Lewis. Daniel jumps up into P4, last week's race winner. Toxic Jack is now in 8th. Bjorn's in 9th. Just Chris jumps up into 7 on the 27.1. But Lewis, that lap on the medium tyres is a brilliant nap time. Can't wait to see what he can do on the softs. He's looking very competitive so far. Gary only does a 27.1. He's only able to go into 7th, just ahead of Just Chris. He's in the Ferrari, is Gary, for today. See who else is currently on a lap. Just had LR Patrick cross the line. Aquaplaning stopped on the side of the road by the looks of things. Not quite sure what that one is about. J. Luke's currently running on the hards. He has invalidated his first run. We've got Dylan coming up to the line now. He does a 28 flat. That looks like a bit of a... He's had a mistake somewhere on that run and he's looking to improve on his next go. Just Hardy then, I think, who's running around at the moment. He's just exited the first sector. He's coming through Luffield. See what he can do in the Haas. Just looking through the comments as well. He thinks that Bullet Boy thinks that pole today might be a 25.9 or 25.8. It's definitely possible. Looking that way so far, a 26.2 for the first run so far. So a lot of time to be gained for some people. Ryan's just crossed the line. I think Ryan invalidated his first run in the Haas as well, so he's going round for another run. Here comes Hardy onto the back straight. It's a 1 minute 3.6 at the end of the second sector. That's about 9/10 of a second down on what McCrew managed, so this is only going to put him around Toxic Jack. He has got a lot of traffic, and that's Gary, I think, who's actually getting in his way quite a bit, is Gary. And Hardy runs wide on the exit of Stowe. Gary really got in Hardy's way there. Gary dives off into the pit lane. I'm not sure whether that was intentional. He might have been trying to give him a slipstream, but kind of blocked him midway through Stowe. Here comes Hardy around the last corner, and it's a 27.5, so he goes ahead of Aquaplaning, but behind Bjorn. And that's Hardy's first run in qualifying. Let's see what his teammate can do if he's on a good lap. See as he goes through Copse. He keeps it flat in 7th gear. Doesn't use a lot of the exit curb. He keeps a very tight line through that corner. Comes through Maggots and Beckett's now. Nice and neat through here. Doesn't want to obviously invalidate on the inside of the corner. Very easy to do. Just turn in ever so slightly too early, and it's very easy to invalidate down the back straight. He is actually backed off by the looks of things. A 1 minute 6.1 at the end of the second sector. Ryan has backed off, so he's probably going to come into the pits and put a fresh set of tyres on. That's the first run through though, and it's Just As at the moment who is on pole. Toxic's just gone out for another run. He's just gone out on his outlap again. I think McCrew's just followed him out of the pit lane by the looks of things. That is McCrew. Yeah, those two definitely running at the front of the field. They want to get as many laps in as possible. They might be trying to go for maybe 4 runs if they can get in and out quick enough. Yeah, we'll ride on board with Toxic then. We'll just ride on board on his outlap. Obviously, no one's really on a lap at the moment. I think just Chris might be on a lap, but he has invalidated, so he's not going to be improving on his time by the looks of things. The only other person who is on a lap is Hardy, but he's backed off completely, so we're just waiting for everyone really to start their second runs now. Toxic's going to be the first one to do so, so we'll stay on board with him. I wonder if you'll see one of the similar strategies for Red Bull. They've been running around doing a lot of slipstream practice, I believe, and they did a lot of slipstream. They used slipstream to good effect last time out as well in Germany, and they've used it pretty much throughout the entire season. Oh, Dylan actually coming out of the pit lane, so they might be trying to do the slipstream. But here goes Toxic then as he comes into the Vale and Club chicane. Just ready to start his second run now. Takes a wide entry, short shifts off, so he knows all the wheel spin. Tries to get the fastest one across the line and to start his lap. What kind of lap time can Toxic pull out the bag then? Let's see through the first corner. Easily flat, no worries through there, no worries through turn 2 either as he comes up into the village and farm section. Short shifts down into first gear to get the car rotated. Dylan's there, he's waiting, there's the slipstream then. The Red Bulls are pulling the slipstream tactics out. See if it improves Toxic's first sector by any means. It's a 27 flat, it's only ever so slightly up, so it doesn't look like it's gained him a lot of time. That is the problem with doing slipstream at Silverstone, is that the straights are pretty short, so it's not really going to be that powerful. And the slipstream obviously isn't as powerful coming out of a slower corner. See what Toxic then can do. Going through cops as he easily flat. He lifts off ever so slightly mid-corner. Comes into Maggots Basic, keeps it in 7th gear, doesn't want to shift up to 8th. Doesn't use a lot of the curb in the first part of Beckett, but he comes through the end of the second sector and he's only ever so slightly up. He's not really improving on his time so far. Let's see if he can gain any time in the last part of the lap. Goes into 5th, he understeers a bit wide. That is over the track limits ever so slightly there for Toxic. You have to keep 2 wheels on the tarmac. Pops it then through the Vale and Club chicane. Uses a lot of inside curb but doesn't invalidate. So he comes up to cross the line and he doesn't improve on his time in the end. So Toxic can't improve at the moment. Stuck on a 26.3. Isn't really able to beat his time. Dylan's come around to start his lap. McCrew, I believe, has jumped into the pit lane. He's invalidated his run. He was a 10th up actually. So that would have put him possibly ahead of Toxic, but he invalidated unfortunately. So there's definitely some more pace in McCrew's car. Just had Gary come around to start a lap. We'll watch him through his lap then. See if he can improve on a 27.1. Got his Ferrari teammate following him in behind. I believe we just had Bjorn cross the line. Yeah, Bjorn's just gone on a 26.9. He's jumped up to P7 in the Toro Rosso. Good lap from him. I think Mike's just crossed the line, but I think he improved, but not by enough to gain him a place. Daniel, meanwhile, jumps ahead of his teammate, so he jumps up into P3. And Lewis, there it is. So Lewis's first run on the soft tyres, and he goes on to the 26 flat. Brilliant lap time from Lewis. Looking very fast. He did say in his interview last week that Silverstone was one of his favourite tracks, and it's proven that way so far. He's looking really fast in that Williams. 26 flat, can anyone come close to that? We'll hop on board with Gary again. Let's see what he's doing. Got a yellow flag in sector 1. Just Chris has spun by the looks of it on the exit of the Abbey corner and has hit the wall unfortunately, so he's not going to be able to improve on his P9 at the moment. Got Dylan in front of Gary coming up to finish a lap, so we'll hop with Dylan and see if he's improving. He's into the pit lane. He isn't improving. He was a 10th of a second down by the looks of things, so he's not improving on his time. Bit of a shock there for Dylan that he's not able to improve on his time. Gary keeps just within the track limits by the looks of things at Stowe as he comes up to finish his lap then. Where can he go? He short shifts up to 4th, nails the wheel spin. As he comes up to cross the line, it's 26.7. He goes nearly 4/10 of a second faster and goes up to P7. So ahead of Bjorn, but still about a 10th and a half behind Mike. So he's not really right. He's not really right at the front of the field yet. He's still a bit of a way off of improving many more positions. He's going to have to find something a bit special on his third run. Just wait and see who else is coming around to finish a lap then. It looks like everyone is coming into the pits bar the 2 Haas cars. Hardy is on a lap. He is 0.2 of a second up, so he is improving. This could put him into the low end of the top 10. Ryan behind him as well. He's on a lap by the looks of things. Here he goes then. Hardy across the line and he does go P10 and 27.3. He jumps up into P10. Where does Ryan go? Ryan invalidated his run by the looks of things, so he's going for another run. He did a 27.2. It said at the top of the screen there, so that would have put him just ahead of his teammate into P10, but behind just Chris. So Ryan has got top 10 pace at the moment, but just hasn't been able to pull the lap together and set a good time yet. So fingers crossed he can do that on his final run. We're coming into the last 5 minutes of qualifying, and it's the top 3 in the championship who are the top 3 in qualifying once again. These 3 have been pretty much unreachable so far in the championship. The only people that have come close so far are Daniel and Janetsky. They're the only people really that have come close to beating these guys in front, and Janetsky unfortunately isn't racing today. He's running around. We've just got Patrick and Hardy. Then those are the only people running around on the laps at the moment. And it looks like Ryan's backed off another run anyway, so he's going to come into the pits and put another set of soft tyres on. We're just waiting for the last people then to come out onto the track for their final run. It looks like one of the Alfa Romeos is going to be the first one out. We've only have one Alfa Romeo in the lobby actually, so that will be Toxic Jack. He's the first one out to start his final run in the Alfa Romeo then. He doesn't want to wait around. I imagine that we're going to see quite a lot of people flood out the pits with about 3 minutes to go, I would say. So Toxic's gone out pretty early. He doesn't want to be caught up in any of that traffic. He wants the clean track all to himself. And two Haas cars then come into the pit lane. And now Toxic Jack is the only one on the track. He's got the track completely to himself. I'll shine a spotlight on him then and see what he can do. He's just behind, he's only just over a 10th outside of the top 10, so a 10th gain could put him right in the fight of things. There's a bit of a gap though from Bjorn in P8 down to just down to Hardy in P10. Obviously, just Chris is out of the session already, so there's about a 4/10 gap between 8th and 10th in the field. Got one of the Red Bulls coming out. That's Dylan coming out to start his final run as well. Just run onto the hangar straight then. So let's see what Toxic can do. Toxic has had a pretty decent season so far. He's had some moments where he has shone, but I don't think the results have really come his way so far. He had a bit of a torrid time last time out, so it just really hasn't gone his way so far this season. He has got good pace in that car. He is definitely capable of a top 5 finish. It's a case of just pulling it all together in one day. But let's see though. We're right on board with the Alfa Romeo man as he starts his final run. Let's see what he can do. Comes with the first corner. He's got absolutely no traffic to contend with. He's got buckets of space on the track. This is very well timed from Toxic to go out onto the track and have absolutely no problems. Keeps it in second gear and then short shifts up to third. Doesn't want to shift down into first. Try and get the extra rotation. He's comfortable being in second gear. Into the first sector then. It's just changed to outlap, so unfortunately I'm not going to be able to see whether he's improving on his time. Fingers crossed he is up on his time though. We'll have to wait and see when it comes to the end of the lap what he is doing. Through Woodcote corner then. We've got a yellow flag. That's one of the Toro Rosso slowing down by the looks of things. And one of the Red Bulls, I believe that's probably Toxic trying to give Dylan the slipstream. That's probably why there's a yellow flag in Sector 1. So you come through Maggis and Beckett's now with Toxic Jack. Nice and neat through here. Isn't using a lot of the curb. It's keeping it very neat and tidy. He keeps it very tight to the left-hand side of the track there, coming onto the hangar straight. There's a lot of traffic to contend with in the first sector. The two Haas cars nearly coming into contact by the looks of things, as they had to move out of the way for one of the racing points. I think there has actually been contact maybe between the two Haas cars. Not quite sure what has happened there. But here comes Toxic round the last corner. Does he improve on his time? He does. A 26.8, a good 6/10 of a second improvement. Goes ahead of Bjorn into P8. Good lap from Toxic. I'm sure he'll be pretty pleased with that. We'll have to wait and see whether the two Haas cars did actually make contact. I'm not quite sure. They were very close to each other. We've got Dylan on a lap. He's going to be the next one to cross the line. He's going to be the next one to cross the line and complete a lap, I believe. We've got one of the Ferraris in front of him, but both of the Ferraris are currently on outlaps. Let's wait and see what Dylan can do. He just touches the grass in the braking zone on the way into Stowe. Just about keeps it in track limits, I think. He just got away with that. Through Vale and into Club now then. Here he comes around the last corner. He does derate. And he goes into a 26.5, so a massive improvement, about 1.5 seconds for Dylan. Jumps up into the top 10. Good lap from Dylan then. I'm sure he'll be pretty pleased with the P6 then. Wait and see who else is on a lap. Gary in front of him's just started a lap. One of the McLarens has gone off the road, as has one of the Racing Points, I believe. They were both on laps. That's McCrew that slowed down in Maggis and Beckett's, and he was on a lap. So I'm not quite sure what's happened to McCrew there, whether he's had a spin or something. Daniel, meanwhile, in the other Racing Points coming up to finish his lap. We've got one of the Williams coming up to the line. That's going to be Jay Luke. Jay Luke goes into P10 on 26.8, exactly the same lap time as Toxic Jack, and he goes into P10. Bjorn's just crossed the line. He invalidated on his run by the looks of things. McCrew looked like he was slowing down to give a slipstream to Daniel. Into Stowe. He just moves out of the way in time for Stowe. Daniel turns in. Goes for a bit of a late apex. Keeps it well within track limits. Mike's just come around to start his final run. Here comes Daniel then up to the line. Let's see what he can do. Got to cross the line, does Daniel, and by the looks of things, 4 thousandths of a second slower. He has a purple final sector, but he's 4 thousandths of a second off of improving his best time. So Daniel stays in P4 for the time being. Toxic Jack has retired from the session. One of the Ferraris is in. That's Gary. Gary's invalidated his final run, so he's not going to be improving on his P8 position. We've got Toxic now coming around the final parts of the lap. Let's see if he's improving. He's only ever so slightly up. He's kind of peaked very early in the session, and he can't get close to it by the looks of things. The other Ferrari, Patrick, is out. Here comes Toxic across the line. He does improve by half a tenth, but he can't gain any places, so he stays in P3 behind just as in the McLaren, who says is on an outlap, but I'm not quite sure whether he is or not. Let's see if he crosses the line in time for the session. He does. He actually improves his time. He does a 26 flat. So just as Nick's pole position off of Lewis, but Lewis is going to be the next one to cross the line. Let's see if he can improve in his last sector. He's down by the end of the second sector by the looks of things. Is this last sector any good? Does it gain any time? It doesn't. So just as in the dying moments of the qualifying session, steals pole position away from Lewis. Just had Bjorn jump up into P6. Good lap from Bjorn. Let's see what McCrew's on. He's improving, I think. No, he's down now. He had a good first sector, but he's down in the second part of the lap. So he looks like he might be out-qualified by his teammate. Hardy just crossed the line and goes P12. Ryan, unfortunately, could only manage a 29 flat in the end. He must have made a mistake somewhere around his lap. Mike doesn't improve on P8, so it's just McCrew, really, who's the last one to cross the line. Let's see if his last sector is any good. Comes around the last corner, then here comes McCrew, and he doesn't improve in the end. A very good last sector to finish the lap. The racing points looking very strong in the last part of the lap, but McCrew isn't able to improve on 5th place, so he's out-qualified by his Racing Point teammate, and that's the end of qualifying. So it's the top 3 in the championship once again, who are the top 3 in the order, but just as steals pole position right in the dying moments. Yeah, right in the dying moments of the session, just as steals pole position away from Lewis. Brilliant lap from the McLaren driver. Race winner from Bahrain, obviously. Wasn't here last time out and didn't win in Spain, unfortunately. That was where Lewis won, so maybe just as trying to make up for the fact that he's losing ground in the standings. But here you go then. So it's just as who takes pole position in the McLaren by just under half a tenth of a second ahead of Lewis. Again, a really close qualifying session. Toxic rounds out the top 3 ahead of Daniel in P4, last week's race winner. McCrew takes P5 in the other Racing Point ahead of Bjorn in P6. Dylan in P7 ahead of Mike in P8. Gary's down in 9th ahead of Toxic Jack. He's the last man in the top 10 in 10th. J. Luke in 11th on exactly the same lap time will start outside the top 10 in 11th ahead of Hardy in 12th. Joseph Chris, what could have been for him, he could have probably improved a lot more on his time. He ends up P13 ahead of Patrick in 14th, Aquaplaning 15th, Ryan 16th, and then it's Ghost and Bullet Boy at the back of the field, who obviously didn't set times in qualifying. But yeah, brilliant qualifying session. If the qualifying session is anything to go by, it looks like the race is going to be incredibly close, and it is looking very dry. So nice clear skies by the looks of things. So we are going to get a dry race. So I imagine we'll see a lot of people do soft and medium, pretty easy strategy, unless anyone decides to go for the hards at the very start of the race if there's an early safety car. Just having a look through the rest of the chat, seeing what everyone's comments are during qualifying. Jav says, well, Dylan isn't bottling. Everyone is feeling in the roasting mood at the moment. Ryan said that he crashed in the pit lane, unfortunately, so that's why he wasn't able to set a good lap time in the end. So that's why he's crashed in the pit lane. Jav wonders whether there'll be any Racing Point team orders. I think that one could be interesting, because you would normally expect it to be Daniel maybe moving out the way for McCrew, but at this point in the season, McCrew is pretty much out of the championship running with only 8 points, I think, to his name, and Daniel has far more points at this point in the season on 31. So Daniel is the better bet at the moment for championship possible run at it, and McCrew is behind in qualifying already. So nothing stopping Daniel from taking top honours at Racing Point in P4, but let's have a look through everyone's tyre strategies. Let's see what everyone has decided to go for. Here we go then. So outside the top 10, we've got all Just As has just hit one of the brake marker, has hit one of the sponsorship banners down the Wellington Straight, but the only people outside the top 10 starting on the soft tyres are Hardy and Ryan, the two Haas cars, in P12 and P16. Everyone else, so J. Luke, Just Chris, Patrick, Aquaplaning, Ghost and Bullet Boy, are all starting on the medium tyres. So have a look out for them at the start of the race to see if they can make any ground early on in the race and what their pace is on the mediums, whether they're able to keep up with the soft runners in front. I think everyone send in your race predictions. Who you think is going to take the race win today? Who do you think is going to come out on top? I think it's going to be very hard to predict considering how close it is at the moment. We obviously know how chaotic Germany was. I think anyone could win this race at this point. There are a number of fast people a bit further down the field again as well. So the likes of Ghost and Bullet Boy are further down the field. We've got obviously we've got Gary down the field. We've got Mike, who's usually a top 5 runner. He's down in P8, so look for him to maybe gain places early on in the race. Same with Just Chris. Obviously didn't get the best of qualifying, so his qualifying position probably isn't representative of his overall qualifying position and his race pace. So look for him to move forward. Yeah, Jav saying in the comments as well that Jay Luke was the Season 1 winner at Silverstone. He's currently in 11th, first man on the medium tyres. Got to look out for him in the race, see what he's able to do. He's obviously the first person on the alternate strategy. Very good to keep an eye on him. Nuffle Bessie has put in his predictions. He thinks Lewis is going to win ahead of Daniel and McCrew, so he thinks a double Racing Point podium today. But here we go then. Pretty much everyone is lined up on the grid, just waiting for Bullet Boy at the back of the field to line into his slot. Here we go then. The start of the British Grand Prix for the Sprint Championship in now. Who's going to get the best start off the front of the field? Is it going to be the McLaren or is it going to be the Williams? Here come the lights then ahead of the drivers. The 5 lights are on. A long hold and they're away. It looks a very even start across the front of the field. It looks like though Just As is going to be safe going into turn 1. Toxic's having a look at Lewis into turn 1. Not able to make... Oh, there's contact between the 2 racing points. I think Daniel got a poor start and has spun and has had contact with McCrew. There's a lot of chaos further back in the field. One of the Williams, that's Jay Luke, that's been caught up in that. There's more contact in Village and Farm. Aquaplaning's just received a 10-second time penalty for corner cutting. There's a lot of collisions going on further back. Toxic Jacques has had a brilliant start. He's up into P5. The top 4 have disappeared. One of the Ferraris in the background is running around with no front wing. That looks like it's Gary that's lost his front wing completely at the start of this race. But it's Just As that leads from Toxic, who's made his way up into second ahead of Lewis in third. McCrew takes P4. Bit of a gap back to Toxic Jacques in P5 ahead of Dylan in P6. But there was a lot of chaos further down the field. Ryan looks like he's been involved in all that as well. One of the Toro Rossos has spun around. That's Bjorn. Bjorn spun on the exit of Luffield by the looks of things. Got another yellow flag in Sector 2. We've got Bullet Boy and Daniel side by side. Daniel trying to come back through the field. He's making his way past Bullet Boy. He's back through at Cops by the looks of things, but looking at the front of the field, Just As looks pretty safe at the moment. McCrew's looking really racy in P4. He's pretty close to the back of Lewis. Lewis hasn't had the best of starts so far, but Toxic looks like he may have made a little mistake coming out of Maggots and Beckett's. Lewis is on the back of him, but it's not able to get close enough. There's no DRS yet, so no one able to make it through at the moment. Just looking through the rest of the field, Mike and Just Chris are going side by side. Just Chris has had an amazing start. 13th on the grid. He's up to 7th already on the medium tyres. He's had a brilliant start. Hardy and Patrick are side by side. Has Hardy spun? Yeah, Hardy spun into the gravel by the looks of things. I don't know if there was contact there or whether he dropped that on his own, but Hardy has spun in the Haas car. He's dropped all the way down to 13th, unfortunately. Bullet Boy's already into the pit lane. I don't know if he's picked up damage at some point. Gary's in to replace his front wing. I think Ryan's doing the same, and Jay Luke. So a lot of people involved in that early race incident. Just Chris has had a spin now as well. A number of people struggling with traction, with grip at the moment. Just Chris, another one that's dropped it. Daniel's making his way back through the field. Has Daniel got front wing damage? I don't think he has. I think he looks like he's got away with it amazingly. So he's hopefully going to try and work his way back through the field. He's got a 3-second gap to Aquaplaning in front. Ghost has made his way into the top 10 already from the back of the grid. He's 9th already. What a brilliant start for the Livid Racing driver. Just behind his Livid Racing teammate of Patrick in P8. Having a look at the front of the field now. Toxic Jack really becoming detached from the top 4 already. There's already a near 2.5 second gap. Dylan up behind him there, starting to drop Mike ever so slightly. And then it's 3 medium runners right behind Mike. Brilliant stuff for the medium runners at the moment, running up in P8, 9 and 10. This is exactly what they needed at the start of this race to try and make this race work for them. Having a look then, Dylan trying to stick within the Citroen and Toxic Jack. He does look faster, but obviously there's no DRS at the moment. One of the William J. Luke looks like he's had another spin. A lot of people really struggling for grip at the moment, and people are looking all over the place. A number of people on the hards. J. Luke and Gary have decided to put the hard tyres on. Bullet Boy and Ryan have put another set of mediums on, so... Well, Ryan was already running on the soft, so he doesn't have to pit again technically. Toxic picks up the fastest lap of the race. Bullet Boy will have to pit again. He started on the mediums and he's put another set on. So he will have to come into the pits and put another set of tyres on later on in the race. Just looking at the front of the field, DRS has now been enabled. Toxic is within DRS range of Just As, but I don't think it's quite close enough to really make a challenge. down into Brooklands. Obviously, the Wellington Straight isn't really that long, so you're not really going to be able to build enough momentum up to make the move stick. And Toxic recognises that. But this is pretty much a carbon copy of what happened in Bahrain at the moment. It's just as leading from Toxic and Lewis, and then McCrew running in fourth. Dylan, though, meanwhile, in the other Red Bull, has made his way past Toxic Jack. He's up to P5. Let's see if he can maybe track down the top four, see if he can try and keep up with them, and maybe put himself in that battle for the win. But Toxic Jack loses a place. Patrick and Ghost are side by side. I think Patrick's just about going to hold on ahead of his Livid Racing teammate. Ghost has a look to the outside, but he's not going to be able to get the momentum to make a move. He tries to switch back, though, on the exit. This is going to be really bold from Ghost if he goes all the way around the outside, and Patrick has backed out. So Ghost makes his way past into Maggots and Beckett's, but this is going to give Patrick DRS, and Ghost is offline midway through Maggots and Beckett's. Patrick's going to have the run on him here. Patrick ups his ERS. He's already nearly out of ERS already. He's used it pretty quickly. Here's Patrick. Wait and see, though. Here goes Patrick round the outside of Ghost. Ghost just holds on to the place, and Patrick runs wide as well for good measure, so he's not able to make his way through. Mike in P7's looking very racy. He's already on the back of Toxic Jack now. Lewis is looking good as well, just as looks like he's struggling a little bit for pace now. Toxic and Lewis are starting to swarm all over the back of him. Dylan isn't able to close in on McCrew. He's kind of stuck in fifth, and Toxic Jack is still there right behind the Red Bull driver, so he's stuck well within DRS range of the Red Bull man, and that's going to keep him close. Let's have a look at the leaders again. Toxic not close enough coming onto the Wellington Straight to make a move. Yeah, Toxic doesn't make the move. Lewis thought about it, I think, in behind. He was very close to making contact with the back of the Red Bull driver, but Lewis isn't able to make his way through. He's trying to make up for a relatively poor start as Lewis. I think Lewis was a bit annoyed that he might have got robbed of pole position, but he's trying to make his way back through, just as, again, doing another race like he did in Bahrain, just controlling it, only being fast in the paces he needs to be to try and build the gap to Toxic. It looks like Just As is more confident in the second part of the lap. But look at the gap that the top four have pulled on fifth place already. 5 seconds nearly that it is back to the other Red Bull driver in P5. Lewis is looking very close to Toxic, but obviously Toxic has DRS on the McLaren, so Lewis isn't going to be able to get past. McCrew becoming ever so slightly detached from these guys now. He's out of DRS range, so he's going to start falling back a bit more. In behind, Dylan and Toxic Jack are still going at it, but Dylan holds P5 for the time being. Mike looking fast in P7 in the Mercedes. He wants to make his move stick. In behind Mike in the other Mercedes is Ghost up to P8 first in the medium runners. He's dragging Patrick along with him. Aquaplaning's just there as well. Daniel, though, is starting to catch these guys. He's half the gap, I think, in about 2 laps to Aquaplaning in front. So Daniel's trying to come back after the contact with his teammate early on in the race. Let's jump back towards the leaders, though. Only 0.4 of a second this time around, so Toxic a bit closer, but looks like he had a bit of a snap of oversteer mid-corner there. Yeah, and it's 0.7 on the exit of the corner, so Toxic a snap of oversteer, and that's cost him a run. Just as trying to break the slipstream by the looks of things. But no need to. Toxic wasn't close enough coming down the straight, so Toxic stays in P2. Another little error there from Toxic in the traction zone, and that's cost him a possible run at the McLaren. Lewis looking the faster of the two at the moment. He looks like he's trying to get past Toxic and maybe have a run at the McLaren himself. Through cops, Toxic just touches the grass on the inside of the corner and picks up a time penalty on the exit, so that's the first time penalty of the race. Only 5 laps into the race, and Toxic is the first person to pick up a time penalty. That's going to be crucial at the end of this race if the guys around him are able to keep it clean. Just looking further behind, Mike looking very close to the back of Toxic Jack. It's only about 0.2 of a second. Is he going to be able to make the move stick, though? It's very similar to what we're seeing at the front of the field, though, is that once you're in a DRS train, it's very difficult to make the overtake stick. Mike has a look, but he's not close enough to make the move stick. Meanwhile, Daniel in behind Aquaplaning. Daniel's trying to come back in the racing point. He's trying to make his way back into the top 10. Bjorn as well on Just Chris. He's trying to make his way back after an early error for the Toro Rosso man. Just then running down through the last corner. Daniel looking very confident in the racing point. Aquaplaning moves to the inside for Abby. Is Daniel going to go all the way around the outside? He does a brilliant run through the last corner. Great move from Daniel. Makes his way up into P10. He's looking very fast. He's only 2 and a bit seconds off the back of Patrick as well. So don't count Daniel out of this race just yet. Very good pace in that racing point. Great move in Aquaplaning. But Aquaplaning is going to have the DRS back down this straight. But he doesn't have the traction on the exit of the farm section to really keep close enough to the racing point. So a great move from Daniel up to P10. Let's see if he can do the same to Patrick and Ghost in front. Ghost is nearly caught onto the back of the queue, forming behind Dylan now. So The medium tyres are really starting to come into their own at this point in the race, especially for the Mercedes driver who has actually just broken into DRS range on his teammate. So Ghost is sitting pretty at the moment in P8. See what he can do when he puts the softs on at the end of the race. He just about runs wide there at Cops. That might be a warning, but we'll have to wait and see. Looking at the front of the field again, Lewis is the closer of the three at the front to making over, closer of the two to making an overtake. Lewis is the faster of the two, but he just doesn't have the space or the straight line speed to make the move stick on Toxic. So the top three stay as they are. They are now 3 seconds clear of McCrew, who has become completely detached from this group now. McCrew, much like Bahrain, running in a race on his own, unfortunately. Fingers crossed that he can maybe try and catch back up to the guys in front. He is running very low on ERS compared to the leaders. Actually, Lewis, look at that. Nearly 70% ERS for Lewis, while the top two are running in 30. So Lewis is looking very confident. Toxic much closer this time round going into the farm section. Does Toxic get on the power well enough coming out of the corner? It looks like he does. He's a lot closer this time around. It's only 0.4 of a second. He might be close enough to make a move stick this time. Just Chris picks up a time penalty now in the Renault. But again, the Wellington straight just not long enough for Toxic to make a move stick, so he has to stay in second for the time being, but he's looking a lot closer, as is Lewis. These three starting to get closer and closer together. Bjorn, meanwhile, has made his way past, up into P12 past Chris. Dylan and Toxic still very close together, followed by the two Mercedes cars. Then it's Patrick, who's just detached in the DRS zone. Daniel in 10th, who's starting to catch these guys as well. But a real queue forming at the moment behind Dylan. In behind Aquaplaning then, who's currently running in 11th in the McLaren. It is Bjorn ahead of just Chris, then Hardy. And then behind Hardy are the four people who have already made a pit stop after the contact early in the race. That's the leader of those is Bullet Boy ahead of Gary, who's then ahead of XL Ryan and J Luke. They round out the drivers at the moment. Still everyone competing in the race, so fair enough everyone for continuing on. It's very close at the top of the field again, but Toxic just not close enough to make a move stick. I think Toxic thought about maybe trying to bait Lewis into going into the pit lane and then dived out of it at the last second. Lewis didn't fall for it. See down the pit straight though, you can see that just as he's starting to struggle a little bit with speed, he has used a lot more ERS than everyone else around him. Toxic has saved a little bit more on that previous lap. Have to wait and see though. Looking again, Toxic Jack looks very close to the back of Dylan's car as well. It goes to Aquaplaning now, picks up a time penalty. Wait and see though, Toxic is a 10th closer coming out of the farm section now onto the back straight, but again, still not close enough. Looks like Just has got very good straight line speed in that McLaren, and Toxic can't make a move stick because of it. So they stay as they are for the time being. And here we go, Toxic Jack down the inside of Dylan at Brooklands. There's a little bit of wheel-to-wheel contact, but they just about get away with it. Oh, Toxic all the way around the outside of Luffield. A brilliant move if he can pull it off. Dylan's going to get the better run out the corner. Here comes Mike now as well. In the background, they're side-by-side coming through Woodcut. Mike's going to try and sneak up the inside of the Alfa Romeo driver. Dylan pulls in front of the Alfa. Here comes Mike down the inside. How they didn't make contact there. Fair enough between the two of them. Toxic Jack just holds on to P6 for the time being. Here comes Ghost as well, trying to get in on the action. Great racing between these guys. Don't know how on earth they stayed in the same order, but brilliant stuff from those guys. Dylan now picks up a time penalty. Just Chris has spun on the exit off Cops and has picked up and has retired from the race, unfortunately. And that's a full safety car. Full safety car, and just in time for the leaders to dive into the pit lane. So they just about made it in time. This is going to really affect the likes of Dylan, who probably want to pit now, but then they're going to get massively held up by the fact that their team is double stacking. So Dylan comes into the pit lane. Pretty much everyone's going to follow them in, I imagine. Ghost is going to stay out on the mediums. This is a shame, though, for Ghosts, is that he's only going to really have 4 or 5 fast laps before he then has to pit again for a set of soft tyres. So he's going to have to hope for another safety car for him to really get back into this race. Him and Patrick, though, were the ones that have stayed out. Aquaplaning has come into the pits from his medium tyres. Let's wait and see what the order is coming out the pit lane. The top 3 have all stayed the same by the looks of things. McCrew stayed the same as well. Dylan's lost out massively, I think. Dylan's fallen behind Mike in that whole pit stop phase. So Mike has jumped the Red Bull driver, as has Toxic Jack. So Dylan loses 2 places in all that. Meanwhile, in behind Aquaplaning stays ahead of Daniel. And then it's Bjorn and Hardy. Aquaplaning's put the hard tyres on. Obviously, he ran mediums earlier on in the race, so he doesn't want to take the softs to the end from this point in the race. But set of hard tyres. This is going to bring the people at the back of the field back into the race as well. Bullet Boy and Gary are all into the pit lane. Is Ryan going to come in? He is, as is J Luke. I imagine he'll probably come in the Williams as well. Let's see what tyres they decide to put on. It's hard tyres for Bullet Boy. See what Gary puts on. Gary puts on the medium tyres, so Gary's going to put the mediums on. I imagine Ryan will probably follow suit. Meanwhile, J. Luke has actually decided to stay out by the looks of things. And in comes Ryan then. Ryan's actually going to put a set of the soft tyres on, so Ryan's the only one that's going to put the soft tyres on. But we've seen this from Ryan in the past. He's the one that's able to pull off a bold strategy. He'll go for a set softer tyres and be able to pull it off. It worked out brilliantly for him in Bahrain, so maybe we'll see more of the same from Ryan here. But he's the only one that's decided to go for all the soft tyres. But just looking at the queue then, just the top two then that have not pitted yet so far, they are really going to fall down through the field though. When it comes to their pit stops, they're going to have to hope for another safety car if they're not going to want to come back out in the same places that they started the safety car period in. You know, we just wait for the safety car to get going. Just obviously have to wait for Ryan to come around before the safety car can get going again. I think actually from Ryan's point of view, the soft tyres, like I said before this race started, they can go a pretty long way. So I don't think Ryan is going to struggle too much to get those soft tyres to the end of the race, which is why I'm a little bit surprised that the likes of Aquaplaning and Bullet Boy decided to put the hard tyres on. I think maybe it would have been better for them to risk and put the soft tyres on. J. Luke's come into the pit lane. Let's see what tyres he decides to go on to. Does he go for mediums or does he go for softs? Looks like a set of the medium tyres. There's a 5-second time penalty by the looks of things for speeding when he came into the pits earlier on in the race. But it is a set of medium tyres then for J. Luke. And he's going to come back out then. Meanwhile, Ryan's come back into the pit lane. So he doesn't actually want to take the softs any further. And it's another set of mediums. So Ryan's already given up on that soft tyre strategy to get rid of his 5-second time penalty by the looks of things as well. So Ryan's in, and it's a set of medium tyres for the Haas driver. Looks like we might be staying out for another lap for the safety car, just waiting for Ryan to get round to the back of the queue in time. But now this is a very important phase in the race. We saw in Spain that Lewis really won the race when he was able to get through the traffic that hadn't pitted yet. He was able to get through the traffic much better than Toxic and Just As were, and that really won Lewis the race in Spain. So it's going to be a case of seeing whether it's another similar case. Can Just As break away from Toxic and Lewis by passing Patrick and Ghost as quickly as possible, or will he fall under pressure from people behind? So I have to wait and see what Dylan can do. Obviously, he's lost 2 places in that pit stop phase. I have to see if he can make those places back up. Meanwhile, Aquaplaning has darted into the pit lane from the hard tyres. Is he going to put a set of mediums on? We'll have to wait and see. Bullet Boy's in as well. So the 2 hard runners that were still on hard tyres at this point in the race have come in. It's going to drop them right to the back of the field. But it might be a better option than staying out on the hard tyres at this point in the race. What tyres do they decide to go on? Medium tyres, it looks like, for the McLaren. And it's medium tyres as well for Bullet Boy. So no one wanting to risk and go for the soft strategy at this point in the race. Although I say that if I were Ghost and Patrick, I probably would have come in at this point and put a set of the soft tyres on and just tried to take them to the end, because they're going to lose out massively by the time they have to come into the pits. And now every single person on the track is on the medium tyres. So now that there's not really a gap in people's strategies other than the top 2, it's all going to be about who has the best pace at this point in the race. Ghosts, who was on the medium tyres obviously earlier on in the race, who's still on the medium tyres now, did look to have pretty decent pace on the mediums. So he's going to be fast at the end of the race on the softs. I have to see whether Daniel can recover even more places as well after his early lap 1 spin. But Ryan has now caught up to the back of the queue. So I believe we should be getting going for the safety car restart on this lap. Jav thinks there's some XL team orders incoming. I believe that's probably for Hardy and Gary. I wouldn't be surprised myself either, Jav. I think Gary definitely has the pace to fight for the top 10. He obviously hasn't had the start to the race that he wanted, but he's now back in it, as is the likes of J. Luke and Bullet Boy. Safety car in this lap then. So this is all about how Ghost is able to cope with this restart. He's keeping up a pretty decent pace at the moment. So there's a little bit of a gap in the field. Does Ghost go at the very last moment, or does he go pretty early? He obviously has to wait for the safety car to come in before we can go. He's dropped his pace down now as he goes through Stowe. He's slowly picking the pace up a little bit now, midway through the corner. He hasn't gone yet. As he just ups his ERS, you can see there. Looks like he's going to go on the exit of Vale. He's keeping it still very slow. He doesn't want to give people the traction and the run. Bullet Boy gets a time penalty for contact with aquaplaning by the looks of things, and Ghost is gone. Someone's wide in the background. I'm not sure who that was. I think that was Toxic that's run wide. It is, and McCrew's up the inside. They're side by side through Abbey, and someone's off at turn 1 as well. Was that Ghost that went wide at turn 1? I'm not quite sure. Just as is already past Patrick, almost runs into the back of Ghost though, and that's caught him out, and here comes Lewis. Lewis has an amazing safety car restart. Toxic ran wide, and Just As has done the same. Lewis is trying to get past the pair of them. Lewis is stuck in the sandwich. He has to go right to the inside. He's going to box Just As in. Oh, Just As just squeezes in front to try and block him off. Lewis looks down the inside. Toxic round the outside now. Toxic trying to retake the places he lost at the restart. Toxic goes round the outside of Lewis. It looks like he's pulled it off. He has by the looks of things, so he's back up and through. He's on the inside of Just As now, though, is Toxic. Just As isn't able to cover him off, and the Red Bull driver making up for the mistake at the restart. He's through, and he's into the net race lead then, is the Red Bull driver. Can he keep it there? Just As still right on the back of him. Patrick doing a brilliant job of holding these guys up. Ghost is starting to disappear off into the distance up front. Dylan, meanwhile, has already made his way past Mike by the looks of things, and back up into P8. Still on board with Toxic though, Just As in behind, trying to desperately regain that net race lead. McCrew's still there as well. He's trying to get in on the action. Dylan and Mike meanwhile in behind. Dylan trying to fend off the Mercedes driver. Dylan looks to the inside. Oh, there's a little bit of contact there. Dylan's moved over ever so slightly in the braking zone on the Mercedes driver. Bjorn and Daniel are side by side. Bjorn looks like he's made the move stick on Daniel. Patrick and Toxic are now side by side again. Toxic trying to go all the way around the outside of Club. Can he pull that one off? He keeps it just within track limits. A brilliant move from Toxic. And Just As looks like he's going to follow him through at turn 1 in the McLaren. He goes all the way around the outside of turn 1 as well. Does the McLaren driver? Does he pull it off? He does. Here comes Lewis now. He's looking to the inside. He's very late on the brakes. Just about keeps out the back of the McLaren driver. Patrick's still on the inside, but all three of them, three places lost for Patrick in 3 corners. And here comes McCrew now to try and make the move stick as well. McCrew looks like he's on the outside. Toxic Jack's there just as well, trying to keep up with these guys. Here comes McCrew past Patrick. It's really not worked for these guys staying out on the mediums. Toxic Jack's there as well. McCrew picks up a time penalty. Jack down the inside of the Ferrari man. Patrick just about leaves him enough space. They just about get away with it. There's a yellow flag somewhere. It looks like Jay Lucas spun around. I'm not sure if there was contact with aquaplaning, but Jay Luke's gone around. Toxic Jack to the inside now of Patrick. Oh my word, they just about get away with going side by side through cops. And Patrick somehow holds onto the place. Bullet Boy with a time penalty. My word, that is absolutely kicking off on the safety car restart. But Toxic within 0.3 of a second of Ghost now. And Ghost just hits the grass there on the way through Chapel. So Toxic's going to get a run on the Mercedes man. Is he close enough to make a move stick into Stowe? He's going to look to the inside. He darts to the inside. Oh, there was a little bit of contact there. It was kind of a half-hearted late move there from Toxic, and he now has to defend from Just As in the McLaren, who's down the inside. Just As forced onto the curb on the inside. They just about get away with no damage. Dylan on the inside of Toxic now. We went around the outside of Vale. He's looking to the inside of Club, but he's not quite got the momentum, and this is going to put Mike on the back of him now. Bjorn's absolutely flying in the Toro Rosso. He's caught onto the back of these guys. After the wait and look and see, and here goes Bjorn to the inside of Mike. Just As and Lewis are side by side. Lewis has actually made the move stick on the McLaren man. So the race leader before the pit stop has now fallen to a net third. He's fallen behind Lewis. And McCrew's there as well to pounce if he makes another mistake. He's not quite close enough. Toxic though, look at the defensive move from Ghost into Brooklands. Toxic all the way around the outside. Ghost just about leaves him space. And Toxic runs wide, forces Ghost wide. Lewis is up the inside. There's a little bit of contact. But Toxic gets away with the race lead. Ghost forced almost completely out of road. And here goes Lewis up the inside for Cops now. Ghost is trying to stick ahead into Cops. They're side by side. Ghost looks like he's going to hold on to the place for the time being. Well held from Ghost around the outside. There's another yellow flag in Sector 2. That's Bullet Boy that's gone round. Bullet Boy has had another spin in this race and he's fallen down the field to the back. He's falling behind J. Luke now. Meanwhile, here comes Lewis on the back of Ghost then. Is Lewis going to be able to make the move stick? Toxic has to defend. Ghost has absolutely no ERS. Neither does Toxic, but Ghost is back down the inside of Toxic. He fights back. Toxic does the switch back in stow. Is Toxic going to hold the place? It looks like he is, but Ghost looks down the inside. Oh my word, that was a very late move. And here comes Lewis all the way around the outside of Vale. He forces Ghost onto the curb on the exit of Club, and this is going to put Just Dance down the inside as well. And it looks like they're through. Yeah, the top three are all through. So Ghost has now fallen back down to 4th after that. Kind of completely muscled out the way there was Ghosts. But he falls to 4th. McCrew's still there in 5th, waiting to pounce Patrick. Still in 6th ahead of Toxic Jack. Bullet Boy picks up a time penalty for speeding in the pit lane. And he's retired from the race, unfortunately. I have to wait and see if Lewis is close enough to make a move on the Red Bull driver Toxic. Toxic has absolutely no ERS left. But Lewis thought about a move, but didn't want to make the moves. He didn't want to get past. So Lewis stays in P2 for the time being. Toxic, meanwhile, Toxic Jack still can't get past Patrick in the Alfa Romeo. Dylan's still there in the Red Bull as well, as is Mike and Bjorn. Daniel's still there. Gary's in the back of this as well. The two house cars of Hardy and Ryan Honing in 13th and 14th. Not really gone their way so far this race. At the front of the field though, Lewis only 0.2 of a second back. Lewis looks so much faster at this point in the race compared to Toxic. Toxic isn't saving ERS anywhere near as well as Lewis is at this point in the race. But Lewis not using his ERS down the straight to make the move stick. Looks like he might want to wait until later on in the race to make the move stick. Here comes Just As though. Again, not close enough, so they're not able to make the move stick. Still Toxic Jack can't get past Patrick. There is a massive queue now forming behind Patrick all the way down to his teammate Gary in 12th. Dylan meanwhile picks up his second time penalty of the race, I believe. McCrew, I didn't notice that. McCrew's got front wing damage by the looks of things on the left hand side of his wing. Don't know quite where McCrew's picked up that damage, but yeah, the Racing Point man struggling now with front wing damage. Fair enough for him for keeping up with Ghost, but yeah, front wing damage for the Racing Point looks like it might put him under pressure. Especially when they start to make moves behind. Mike and Dylan are side by side. Mike trying to go all the way around the outside of Brooklands. He's got the inside line for Luffield. Dylan keeps it very tight, kind of squeezes him there, and Dylan's completely forced out wide because of that. Didn't really leave Mike a lot of room there. That's let Mike through, and Bjorn and Daniel. Dylan trying to come back around the outside of Daniel. He turns in for Cops. He's going to go all the way around the outside of Cops. Is he going to make the move stick? It looks like he is. Daniel has to back out. Here's Gary trying to make a move as well. Dylan's wide though through Maggots and Beckett. He's completely offline. That's going to put Daniel right on the back. Bjorn meanwhile in front as well. Trying to look on Mike. This has given Toxic Jack a good break up in front to try and make the move stick on Patrick now. Patrick's starting to close in on McCrew ever so slightly, who's struggling with that front wing damage. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, it's just a 10th of a second. Ghost is into the pit lane. So that's taking him out of the running now. Ghost is going to fall all the way down the field. He'll fall down to 15th place. The top three, though, once again starting to disappear away from McCrew at this point in the race. Just having a look in behind, though. Mike is trying to catch back up to Toxic. He looks like he's just within DRS range of the Alfa Romeo driver. And that should help him defend from Bjorn as well. Looking in behind as well. Gary's starting to become a little bit detached from the guys in front. He hasn't quite got the pace of the likes of Daniel to maybe try and keep with him. Looking in behind though, McCrew really starting to become detached now that he's lost DRS to the top three. Look how close the top three are. But just because McCrew has lost DRS, he's dropped nearly 2 seconds back now, and Patrick is still starting to catch him ever so slightly. Toxic Jack all over the back of the Ferrari man. This is his perfect time to make the move stick. Considering that Patrick should be coming into the pits probably this lap or the next, he's going to have to try and make the move stick and get past the Ferraris to try and gap Mike before that whole queue of cars catch back up. Gary, meanwhile, picks up a time penalty. Look at the lead, though. Lewis down the inside. Lewis has finally decided to make his move on Toxic. Breezes past in a straight line. It's very easy in the end for Lewis. Toxic looking to come back into Vale, but he's not close enough. Neither is Just As in behind, so they stay like that. But Lewis, biding his time like he has done in previous races. He's just waited for the right moment, and he's now finally made his move stick on the Red Bull man. But it's not over yet as Patrick comes into the pit lane. So he drops out of the running now. But this has put Toxic Jacques right on the back of McCrew. So McCrew now leads that train of cars all the way down to Gary in P10. Is Toxic going to be able to try and make a move stick on Lewis? Yep, it's the CRS. It's only 0.3 of a second, so he might just be close enough, but he isn't opening his DRS. He might have a DRS failure, Mike Toxic. He's not opening it, so I think he has a DRS failure in that Red Bull, so that's really going to cost him. Trying to keep up with Lewis. This is prime time for Lewis to try and gap Toxic and Just As now. Meanwhile, Toxic Jack all over the back of the Racing Point now of McCrew with that front wing damage. Really starting to cost him time. There's a huge queue now behind him. Daniel in P9 looking feisty, trying to get past Dylan. Just a note on the people that came into the pits. Ghost and Patrick, 14th and 15th. Ghost, 14.5 seconds off the back of J. Luke. What a disastrous strategy that has been for Ghost and Patrick to not come in under the safety car. It really hasn't worked for them, unfortunately. Just in front of Daniel. Dylan touches the grass ever so slightly. At the front of the field as well, Lewis holds on to the lead ahead of Toxic. Toxic saving up his DRS once again. Waiting for his DRS to be re-enabled by the looks of things. Just As in behind looking feisty as well. I think the one though that's looking most confident to try and take that P4 place away from McCrew looks like Mike at the moment. He's looking very fast. He's caught back up to Toxic Jacques and is looking desperate really to try and get past the Alfa Romeo man to have a run at the Racing Point himself. Meanwhile, the top three stay as they are. Down the Wellington Straight, there's no change in order there. Ghost picks up the fastest lap of the race at 28.7. Brilliant lap from him. Toxic Jack can't make the move stick on McCrew. So McCrew holds on to P4 for the time being, but it's only really a matter of time for the Racing Point. He's really going to struggle with understeer, especially through Maggots and Beckett's, and that's going to put Toxic Jack all over the back of him for the hanger straight. Bjorn looking feisty in P7 as well. He's had a brilliant second half to this race. Dylan joining down in P8 at the moment ahead of Daniel in P9. Good recovery from the man who spun on the first lap of the race. Gary in P10 as well. He was caught up in that incident. Good recovery from him. Toxic Jack with a 3-second time penalty now. In 5th place, he picks up 1. Is he close enough to McCrew through Maggots and Beckett's? I don't quite think he is actually. I think McCrew's had just about a good enough of a run through the corner, but here comes Jack anyway. Great straight line speed in the Alfa Romeo. He looks to the inside and he's through. That's pretty easy pickings in the end for the Alfa Romeo man. McCrew can't really do anything to defend it, but can he re-attack into Vale? He's not close enough. So the Alfa Romeo man with Toxic Jack takes P4 ahead of McCrew. Now it's going to be a wait and see if whether Mike can get through as well, or whether McCrew can come back at the Alfa Romeo man. McCrew though running with absolutely no ERS at all. Bjorn running with a lot of ERS in the car, so is Dylan. There's a yellow flag in Sector 2. It looks like Aquaplaning has spun on the exit of Cops by the looks of things. He's managed to keep going though by the sounds of it. Does McCrew try and come back at the Alfa Romeo man? I don't think he's going to be close enough. He isn't in the end. Yeah, and it looks like Aquaplaning's had another spin in Maggots and Beckett's. His tyres must be massively overheating at this point. Oh, what a disastrous race this has been for the McLaren man. Hopefully he's able to continue going and get back to the pit lane. But look at this queue of cars behind the Alfa Romeo and Toxic Jack all the way down. P4 down to P10. What a queue of cars this is. Just goes to show how evenly matched this field is. Brilliant stuff to watch. Gary at the back in P10. And Dylan and Daniel were looking very close there through Maggots and Beckett's. That's going to put Gary on the back of Daniel. Is Gary going to try and make the move on the Racing Point? Gary has barely any ERS left. Does he look to the inside? He has a think about it, but Daniel is able to cover the line off, so Gary can't make the move stick. Meanwhile, up at the front of the pack, top three have stayed as they are. Again, it's just a queue really waiting for someone in the top three to make a move. Have to wait and see in behind as well. Mike has made his way past McCrew, so Mike is up into P5. Here comes Bjorn down the inside of Abbey. And Dylan all the way around the outside. He's on the grass. That was off the track there for Dylan. That was a bit of an ambitious move. I'm not sure why he didn't decide to wait for the straight. He's got grass in his tyres and he runs right at farm because of it. He's still down the inside. Oh, and Dylan forces McCrew into his teammate. Again, Dylan being a bit too aggressive with his moves here. And McCrew holds on to P7. They manage to stay in the same order. But this is allowing Bjorn to get away. McCrew and defense to the inside. Dylan tries to look to the inside but isn't able to make the move stick. But this is starting to split this queue of cars up now. McCrew's lost DRS range to Bjorn in front. And there's contact in further behind. Daniel and Gary make contact. Daniel is spun around by the Ferrari man. Pascoe's the Haas driver of Hardy. But yeah, Gary just too eager on the throttle. Phil Luffield just runs straight into the back of Daniel again. Daniel was tapped around by another driver. But Daniel, I think, has got away with it with no front wing damage. Gary definitely did have front wing damage in that contact. That's going to free up Dylan to make a move on McCrew and make it pretty easily as McCrew runs into the grass on the way through Chapel. And here goes Dylan. Does he go to the outside? He does. He's trying to go for the long way around the Stowe. He doesn't go for the inside. McCrew sticks it on the inside. Dylan leaves him just enough space and stays on the track just about. So Dylan moves his way up into P7, but he's now got about a 2-second gap to Bjorn in front. He's going to really have to try and close that gap down. Meanwhile, just as was looking pretty close to the back of Toxic, but I don't think he's going to go for a move at any point in this part of the lap. He's going to wait for the DRS zone. I think he's just trying to wait for Toxic and Lewis to have a battle here. McCrew picks up a time penalty now as Mike is starting to close in on Toxic Jacques, as is Bjorn as well. Bjorn's looking very fast here at Silverstone. Much better performance from Bjorn here today than he has had so far this season. Let's see if Mike is close enough. I don't think he is. And Mike holds on to P5 and Toxic stays in P4 for the time being. Meanwhile, in behind, Daniel repassing Ryan. So Daniel's back up into P11. He's now going to have to chase down Hardy in the other Haas car, who's all over the back of Gary now with Gary's front wing damage. Bjorn looking very feisty in P6, trying to make a move just as is very close to the back of Toxic now in the McLaren. This just has his chance to make a move stick and try and catch back up to Lewis. He's not fast enough in a straight line. Dylan picks up his third time penalty of the race. That's definitely more than he's had than anyone else around him. Mike, meanwhile, all the way around the outside of Stowe. He wants to keep it within the track limit, so he doesn't go all the way around the outside. He looks to the outside of Vale now. Does he try and get the switch back for the exit of Club for Abbey? Have to wait and see if he's got the run. He is close, but I think he's probably going to wait for the back straight. Bjorn's there ready to make a move as well if any sort of mistake creeps in. There they go through Abbey then into the village farm section. No one makes a move there in the slower part of the track, but is Mike close enough to make a move into Brooklands? He might. I don't think he is. He's definitely not close enough. It has to be 3 attempts if you into Brooklands, and Mike isn't close enough, so he's going to have to stay in P5 for the time being. Great defensive driving at the moment from Toxic Jacques in P4. In behind, meanwhile, Dylan still isn't able to gap McCrew, and he's not catching up to the guys in front. So Dylan's stuck in P7 at the moment. Hardy, meanwhile, has passed Gary, and now Daniel's on the back of Gary. Yeah, Gary really struggling with that front wing damage now. He's almost dropped completely out of the top 10. Again, meanwhile, the race leaders, though, it is Lewis leading out in front. Lewis looks more confident in the faster parts of the track. Remember, Toxic does have a time penalty, and I don't believe Lewis or just has one yet. So at the moment, Toxic is out of the running for the win, unless the top 3 around him get penalties. Mike, meanwhile, around the outside, he's a bit further ahead this time round. He goes all the way around the outside. One of the Haas cars spun off the road. That's Ryan that's spun off. Mike has made the move stick on Toxic Jacques. Mike is up into P4. Brilliant stuff from him. Bjorn looking to make a move stick as well. We'll have to wait and see if he can get past the Alfa Romeo man. He isn't going to make a move into Abbey, but can he make a move into the farm? Oh, Mike, meanwhile, too fast through Abbey. Goes through the grass. He was off the road. That's going to put Toxic Jacques back, all right, on the back of him again for the Wellington straight. Gary, meanwhile, picks up a time penalty. Daniel's made his way past Gary and back up into the top 10 in the racing point. Doesn't look like Toxic or Bjorn are going to be close enough to make a move stick down the Wellington straight. Don't know where the second half of this race has gone, but my oh my, it's absolutely flown by. We've only got 2.5 laps left of this race. Meanwhile, an update on the soft runners. Ghost has taken chunks of time out of J. Luke, but it just has not worked for the Mercedes man. He's taken about 10 seconds out of J. Luke in the last 8 laps or so, but it just really hasn't worked for him, unfortunately. Just looking through, Gary really struggling with that front wing damage. J. Luke is now the next person to try and get past him. Hardy running in P9. Good race from Hardy. He's not really had the pace to keep up with the guys in front, but a nice clean race from him, and it's going to reward him at the moment with a top 10 finish. Exactly the confidence boost he probably needs. Dylan has caught up massively to Bjorn in front. He's taken about a second out of him now, so he's nearly within DRS range. Mike holds on to P4, they're ahead of Toxic Jack and Bjorn in P6, but Bjorn gets a great run out of Stowe. Does he look to the inside for Vale? He's not late enough on the brakes, so we can't make that move stick. Gary, meanwhile, has now fallen behind J. Luke, so Gary might be under pressure from Ghost if Ghost has the pace to catch up to the Ferrari man before the end of the race. Is Toxic Jack going to be close enough to retake P4? Meanwhile, the top guys, once again, they're still just in a queue. Lewis running at the front has the pace to hold the guys up behind, and they just don't want to make a move at the moment. It looks like it might be a last-ditch, last-lap attempt from Toxic to try and take the win. Yellow flag in sector 3 somewhere. One of the Haas cars is round. That's Ryan again. Ryan has had another spin by the looks of things. Let's let Patrick through now. Looking through the rest of the field though. Daniel starting to catch up to Hardy to try and take P9. Daniel's had to make 2 recoveries in this race, and to still come away with a top 10 finish would be great for him. Ghost picks up a time penalty now. Looking at the race leaders down the hanger straight, still 0.4 of a second gap between each of them. No one thinking of making a move just yet. Mike, meanwhile, in P4, 10 seconds off the back of the top 3. It just goes to show how dominant and fast the top 3 are in this championship. Mike doing very well though to hold on to P4. Bjorn still can't find a way past that Alfa Romeo. He's just stuck in P6 at the moment. Oh, he had a massive snap of oversteer on the exit of Stowe. Very well held, but he just about stays on the road. Dylan, meanwhile, has just caught up to DRS range on the Toro Rosso for the final lap of the race. Dylan takes a lot of inside curve there. Poor club. That might ruin his run coming out of the corner ever so slightly. We're on to the final lap of the race. This second half of this race is absolutely flown by. Dylan, meanwhile, picks up his 4th time penalty. He's racking them up at the moment. This is going to drop him out of the points if he's not careful. Toxic, again, still only 0.4 back. He cannot make a move. Have to wait and see whether they are close enough. Meanwhile, in behind, it looks like no one's going to be able to make a move either for P4. Toxic Jack running around in P5. Patrick has retired from the race. He's retired in the pit lane, unfortunately. Ghost has nearly caught up to the back of Gary for P12 in the end, so Ghost is absolutely flying compared to the Ferrari man. But it looks like, at this point in the race, Lewis has got this one covered. Lewis took the lead after that safety car restart, and has had the pace to hold them behind ever since. These two have been so evenly matched, but Lewis has looked the faster of the 3 all race, in my opinion. He's been saving the most DRS. Toxic's now under pressure from Just As. Toxic, remember, does have a time penalty, so Just As doesn't really need to fight this. But here they go through Stowe and then into the Vale and Club chicane for the last time. It's going to be Lewis that's going to come out on top in this race. What a brilliant race from Lewis. He's going to extend his championship lead even further. It's almost unassailable at this point, but Lewis wins at Silverstone. Brilliant run from Lewis. Toxic crosses the line in second, Just As did have a time penalty in the end, so he stays 3rd. It's going to be Mike that's going to cross the line in 4th, ahead of Toxic Jack and Bjorn. Ghost has passed Gary, meanwhile, down the hanger straight. Toxic takes P4. Bjorn jumps Toxic Jack in for P5. Dylan falls behind McCrew. Where does Hardy finish in all this? Hardy just holds him to P9 ahead of Daniel. Hardy crosses the line. He jumps Daniel. So does and Daniel jumps the pair of them, actually. So Dylan falls to P10 in the end with all those penalties. Nearly came under pressure from J. Luke in the end. J. Luke picked up a time penalty on the very last lap, and that cost him a P10 result in the end. Hardy stays in P9. Daniel jumps up to P8. Great recovery again. 2 recoveries in this race from Daniel to come home in P8. Fair enough. Looking in behind, Ghost finishes ahead of Gary. Ryan's going to be the last one to cross the line. Just didn't go his way today, unfortunately, for the Haas man. But Ryan crosses the line in P14, and that is the British Grand Prix for the sprint championship in INL. So it is Lewis that wins once again. Our first repeat winner of the season is Lewis, and his championship lead is going to extend even further from what it was already. He had a brilliant championship lead coming into this event. Let's just double check what the championship lead was. It was 22 points coming into this race. And coming out of this one, it's going to be, I believe, it's going to be about I'd say 29 points coming out of this race. So Lewis is going to have over a race victory in hand already coming out of this one. So brilliant stuff from Lewis once again. Yeah, we'll just run you through the finishing order before we try and get the top 3 in for some interviews. But there you go. So it's Lewis that ends up winning the race. He wins from Toxic in second and Just As in third place. Mike comes home in P4. Once again, a good drive for Mike, making his way through the field after a lowly top 10 qualifying result. Good stuff for Mike. Bjorn takes P5. Great race from him ahead of Toxic Jack. Another great race for him as well. Really good stuff for Toxic Jack. Ahead of McCrew in 7th. What could have been for him. Same for Daniel in P8. Just didn't go racing points way today. Hardy finishes in 9th. Good race from him. He ran around kind of on his own for most of the race, but kept out of trouble and kept it clean. Good stuff from Hardy for P9. Dylan drops to P10 after 5 time penalties in the end. Jay Luke crosses the line in P11 in the Williams. What a shame for him. It could have been a brilliant race, but it just didn't go his way. Ghosts, unfortunately, the strategy didn't pay dividends for him. Neither did it for Patrick. He ends up 12th ahead of Gary, who had contact later in the race. Ryan with a couple of spins and aquaplaning as well, finishing a lap down. Our retirees in this race were Patrick, Bullet Boy, and just Chris in the end. But yeah, what a brilliant British Grand Prix. I wouldn't say it was good as the Germany race last time out, but still brilliant action throughout the field. Just goes to show how close this division is. But yeah, the top 3 in the championship really starting to race away now, especially considering Janetsky wasn't here. They definitely have jumped well ahead in the championship standings. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to try and invite our top 3 into the party so that we can get an interview with these guys just before we round off the stream today. I have to wait and see who wants to join for an interview. Brilliant. So there are our interviews then. Sent our invites out for our interviewees today. Fingers crossed we get some of the top 3 in today. I have to wait and see if anyone else joins. Our second place man has joined so far. Hello, Toxic.
I was going to say good evening, afternoon.
So used to the LOE times by the looks of things.
Yeah.
Just have to wait and see whether our race winner and our third place finisher will come into the party. While we wait, though, we'll have an interview with you, though, first, while you're here. So, first of all, Toxic, just before we get into the race, qualifying for you, finishing 3rd in the end, about 0.2 of a second off the back of the top 2 in front. Do you think that was the most you could have managed? Because I noticed you set a fast lap time early on in the session, and you couldn't really beat it.
Yeah, I don't know what was actually going on that quality session. I mean, in the practice before that, I did a 26 flat. And then going into the end of that quality lap, I had no fuel in the car, and I did a 26.2, so I was completely baffled, to be honest.
Yeah, so obviously ended up 3rd in the end with your 2 main championship rivals ahead of you. Going into the race, you ended up 2nd coming into at the end of the first lap. Do you think was the strategy to try and just stick in 2nd place and save your ERS, or did you want to try and gun for the race lead?
Just 2nd place. I didn't want to be 3rd because that's like 3rd and 1st, like the worst positions for a train. So I kind of just wanted to sit in 2nd and save ERS and fuel.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously the safety car came out and you came into the pits and fell behind a few people in the traffic. Just to say, the safety car restart was a little bit chaotic, to say the least. How did you kind of manage that part of the race? Because obviously you made some good overtakes and you nearly took the net race lead. Well, you did take the net race lead at that point in the race. So how did you kind of manage the safety car restart?
Well, I kind of spun, but nobody used to know that. And then I didn't expect to get in front of Lewis and just as, but I kind of just wanted to like get past those cars as quick as possible. So I kind of just took the lead on that, and then let Lewis back through because he had no pens, and then it was just kind of like a straight sailing to the end, just trying to keep up and keep just as behind.
Yeah, with obviously Lewis getting no pens, he obviously took the win on track as well. Do you think you would have had the pace to win on track, or do you think it was a case of you weren't able to really able to beat Lewis on track today?
I think if I didn't have a pen, I would have tried and battled him. But I mean, who knows what would have happened from that?
Yeah,
could have gone either way, really.
Absolutely, yeah. We're heading to the final 3 rounds of the championship now. We're over halfway through this sprint championship already. But next time is Italy, I believe. So how are you feeling for Italy? What are your hopes for that track?
Just the finish, really. I hate that track. Like, it seems like a simple track to get right, but it's really not when you're pushing.
Fair enough. So fingers crossed you finish Italy, fingers crossed, and hopefully you come back with another podium. We might see you in this same position maybe this time next week. But yeah, thank you for coming in for an interview.
Thanks for the comms.
Yeah, no problem. So we'll move on then to our race winner. Lewis took up the race win today on track. So congrats, Lewis, first of all, on your race win. You're the first repeat winner of the season, so congrats on that one. Just going into qualifying, obviously you had pole taken off you at the very last moment. Do you think you could have gone faster in qualifying, or do you think that was your maximum?
Could have went faster, but had lost it through Maggots and Beckett's, and yeah, settled for P2. I didn't mind it because I could just follow the train round and save the RS.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we spoke a little bit to Toxic about the train and how you manage it. You obviously ran for most of the train in the first part of the race in third place. How was it managing that kind of situation? Because obviously you have to kind of push to try and keep up with the train, but obviously you have no threat from behind. So how did that kind of play out for you?
It was pretty simple. I just had to use overtake on the straights really, and then sometimes I could drop it down when I got close enough. Toxic was a bit loose on the car when following people, so he always allowed a gap for me to catch back up anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So safety car restart, I mentioned it obviously with Toxic. With you, the safety car restart, like I said, was a bit chaotic, but you still managed to come out of it in a really good position. From then at that point onwards, you passed Toxic pretty much with ease to take the race lead, and then from then on it was almost plain sailing really. Did you have a lot of warnings in that race? Were you close to a penalty, or were you just running around kind of doing your own thing and not really worrying about it?
I had one warning, and I was more worried on not getting any penalties than allowing like Toxic or Pat to go past. I would have let them go past if they got alongside me, just to not risk my own race.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, just managed it from there.
Yeah. Well, you kept good on your promise from the interview last week, saying that Silverstone was one of your best tracks, and you obviously come home with a win, so congrats on that. Looking forward to Italy. Is that another good track for you, or is that a bit more of a bogey track on the calendar for you?
It's one of my better tracks, but the DRS stream will probably be the same thing, especially around there.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anything's to go by with you saying that's your best track, then look out for you maybe for another win next time out. But yeah, congrats today on your win, and we'll see you next week. Cool, and then we will move on to our third place finisher, Just As. First of all, congrats Just As on your podium. Just going into qualifying, you took pole in the end. Were you surprised with pole, or do you think that you had the pace to take pole easily in that one?
Yeah, I was surprised with the pole. That was actually a very bad lap. I think I lost at least a tenth through Maggots and Beckett. So I thought I could do easily 25.9, maybe 25.8. So overall, I was actually really surprised with the pole position. Yeah,
well, going into the race, obviously the first half of the race, you were running around in the lead. It was pretty reminiscent of Bahrain, honestly. So, at that point in the race, were you pretty confident that you could have had the win in the bag, or were you kind of struggling to try and keep ahead of Toxic and Lewis?
Yeah, I was confident in keeping my place. I was just using my RS on DRS zones, just controlling the pace, and I really felt confident in keeping the first place. But yeah, safety car came and ruined the plans.
Yeah, so obviously the safety car restart unfortunately caught you out, and you ended up being in third place. Do you think you could have had a run had Lewis maybe not been there, or had the DRS train not been so powerful at this track? Do you think you could have had a run at the top two, or do you think third was kind of the best you could have got out of that situation?
No, I'm not happy with the third. I think the guys in front ran a little less wing. I think I could not do anything on the straights.
Yeah.
So I just was following the cars, and that's it. It was really boring after the restart for me.
Yeah, I can imagine running around in a kind of a slipstream train, not being able to make any overtake sticks. It can be very frustrating. But looking forward to Italy. Obviously, you'll be running probably a lot lower wings at Italy than you will be here. How are you feeling about the race in Italy? Is it a good track for you, or a bad one on the calendar for you?
Well, I think my race pace is better than quali, so I'll just hope to put a decent lap in the quali and then survive the lap 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Surviving lap 1 at Italy, it can be difficult, and it is definitely key to winning a race. But congrats on your podium today, and
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck for next week, and yeah, we'll see you next week. Hopefully, we'll be interviewing you once again next week.
Yeah, hope so.
Well, brilliant. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to the Sprint Championship. That's where we're going to end today. Yeah, thank you for tuning in for round 4. We'll see you next week for round 5 of the championship at Italy. We're coming into the last 3 rounds of the championship, so after Italy it will be Singapore and then Brazil, and then that's where we'll end off before the new game comes out. But yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you everyone for commenting on the stream, keeping me company while I've been commentating on my own. And we will see you next week at the same time. Tune in about half an hour's time for Division 2 as well. That will be commentated over by Hugo. So good luck for everyone for Division 2 as well. So thank you very much everyone for tuning in, and goodbye.